The remnants of Gamergate 2 are still raging on, and those who were crushed under its heel have been left bruised and battered by the experience of trying to stand in the way of millions of players who have become sick of the politics that the game industry have begun to push. 2024 was a legendary year for the battle of gaming, movies, and more. More than ever before, the movement of the players being the de facto strength in the industry has never been more true than it is right now. And of course, since many players keep these companies humble and expose them when they lie or try to swindle other players, it means that they're now a problem. I am, of course, one of those problems because I exist as a channel first and foremost because of the utter inability of truth within an entertainment medium that I love so much. I started my channel sort of directionless until I started to see how the game industry ruled through ideology with an iron fist and how it wasn't being challenged. It then made me speak out, first scared to do so, honestly, but I did it anyways, and the rest is now history. I like to think that my content clearly is, controversial, I guess, which has netted me both fans of my work and many people who also want to see me gone. But this really only tells me that what I'm doing is clearly resonating. The truth is that I just want video games to be video games. I don't want them to be TED Talks for crazy people, and I do think the industry is to a degree healing itself, and more games devoid of ideology are being made these days, thankfully. Is it perfect? No, of course not. But it's much better than, say, 2020 to 2024, that's for sure. Anything is really better than the majority of games released during that time period, but one man has really made it out for people who supported Gamergate. And that man's name is Nick Calandra. He works at Second Wind, which is a YouTube channel that existed after the fallout of another channel and website called The Escapist. So once The Escapist kind of fell apart, Nick Calandra, alongside others, made Second Wind, which at first had massive momentum. But since then, outside of really Yahtzee Croshaw and his fully ramblomatic series of videos, Second Wind has sort of just limped on since. In no small part due to Nick Calandra, who made it his personal mission to destroy Gamergate 2, which only led to Nick being destroyed by the very behemoth that he believed that he was destined to slay. Now Nick believes legal action should be taken against people like myself and others, that we costed these companies millions of dollars in damages by lying, according to him. And shout out to the master of the TDS, by the way, for catching this. Here's their Twitter profile on screen. Please give them a follow for finding this. They do excellent work. And here's what Nick said via LinkedIn as it reads here. I really wonder when these game studios are going to take action against these YouTubers and social media grifters making up lies about people working at their studios, their business dealings, sales data, etc. It's clearly affecting businesses, review bombing, harassment of developers, stalking campaigns. Where do you take a stand? It's not contained to social media anymore, and we all know it. Funnily enough, as you can also see above that post, Kim Belair, of all people, that's the co-founder of Sweet Baby Inc., also liked his post here as well, which was kind of interesting. Good to know that all the weirdos who push this sort of stuff seem to all know one another. Didn't know that Nick was a Sweet Baby defender myself, but it really doesn't surprise me that he knows Kim Belair to some degree behind the scenes too. So, Nick believes that anyone who stands for players and actually keeps the companies accountable, which gaming journalists were originally meant to do, as that was their job, to, be the medium between the player and the company, but as we all know now, most gaming journalists have become mostly apologists for these companies and defend them with their full bodies, if for no other reason than simply because of that if they don't do that, they might lose access to review codes and other perks. It's a big reason why Gamergate even existed over 10 years ago today. It was all about the ethics of gaming journalism that started all of it. It was actually 11 years ago when Gamergate originally happened, that even to this day, the same ethics have not really changed. That tells you a lot, which is that the people who shepherd and protected their access to these games are also willing to turn a blind eye to the corruption because it wouldn't benefit them specifically to speak for the players anymore. I mean, think about it. Many gaming websites are nothing more than memes to most players now. Most of what IGN, GameSpot, or PC Gamer, thegamer.com, and more produce has become nothing more than things people point at and laugh at. It's not necessarily because people are mean per se, although they would like to make you think that they are, when in reality it's because these websites have clearly shifted their content to be from having a player-focused mentality first to now having that of a corporate shielding one instead. This inevitable shift in content creation has led to what has happened today. Gamergate 2, which began because a Sweet Baby Inc. employee attempted to force Steam as a platform to ban Cabrutus Rambo, who was a once random Steam user, for making a list of their games, then led to backlash that can still be felt to this day. Even websites like The Verge, with journalists like Ash Parrish, attempted back then to also lie to players again when covering that backlash, claiming that Gamergate 2 started because of Cabrutus being an evil, angry player, while completely omitting the fact that a Sweet Baby employee named Chris Kindred was the actual person who started the backlash in the first place. Here's that article from 2024, by the way, titled "The Return of Gamergate is Smaller and Sadder." Maybe you've seen it before. But they really couldn't be more off the kilter if they even tried, really, because Gamergate 2 exploded through the industry like a searing, blazing sword that evaporated the twisted guts of this infection that was the games industry's journalism and then some in ethics at the time. You see, these game journalists all tried to stand up to the players, as did the studios, and none of it worked. Any game that was aligned with Sweet Baby Inc. was either rejected or did far worse compared to previous games. Not even Spider-Man 2 was able to reach the sales of the previous game. God of War Ragnarok was also touted a disappointment by many, both games at Sweet Baby Inc., no wonder, and the games that routinely won Game of the Year at the Game Awards over the years were mostly just normal games pretty much. Sekiro, Elden Ring, It Takes Two, Astro Bot, and more. Even games that did win big like Baldur's Gate 3 that had its more woke elements, if you want to use that word, placed behind instead player choice, which then allowed that game to also sell well because it, unlike many other games before and after it, actually respected and allowed real player choice. Since then, player choice has become something of the past really. You weren't allowed to ignore or not engage with characters or ideologies you would normally roll your eyes at. Games began selling worse, people started buying less games, some even failed outright, studios shut down, and layoffs began everywhere. But it was all the players' fault. In Nick Calandra's eyes from Second Wind, as you saw earlier, he still believes that people like me and more are what's really wrong with the industry. When he fails to understand is that people like me only exist because of the mistreatment and lies people like him and Kim Belair perpetuated for years in this industry that have done instead. Nick is no stranger to the highs and lows of Gamergate. He, after all, got completely annihilated by the tactics of regular players, which not only exposed Second Wind, but also ruined his credibility. And I mean it here more often than not. If you want more non-BS reporting on games, consider liking this video, subscribing, and leaving a comment. Thank you. It really does help a lot. But Nick really wanted people like Grums out of the industry for good. He was so hellbent last year that he fell for a classic ruse by a user named GigaBear. So in case you don't know, this happened in April 2024. Here's what GigaBear said about tricking and ruining Nick Calandra's credibility as it reads here. For weeks, Nick of Second Wind has been publishing an endless stream of smears and baseless claims against Grums and myself. I sought to demonstrate how desperate this man is to publish anything he can use to that end, no matter how flimsy or lacking of corroboration or veracity. So I sent him an anonymous email with a story too good to be true. I then posted a tiny fraction of the supposed conversation to my Twitter, knowing that where attacking Grums is concerned, he would immediately run the story before he had even verified it, and he did just that. Rust and Nail does not exist. In fact, Rust and Nail is an anagram of Uranist. The project I supposedly backed does not exist. The conversation is a complete fabrication made in page source between two of my own Discord accounts, and he fell for it hook, line, and sinker. As seen here, GigaBear posts the exchange they had labeling themselves as Brandon Jones, a so-called developer who worked with Mark Kern, who goes by Grums on Twitter. Yet this Brandon Jones guy never really existed. It was just GigaBear luring Nick Calandra of Second Wind into his honey trap to just make him look like an idiot and prove that he was just hell-bent on destroying the credibility of those that he hated so badly that he was willing to look past the ethics of what should be games journalism. Oh wow, you mean like the same exact reason as to why Gamergate began to begin with. Imagine that. Like I said, following this, Nick pretty much lost his mind. He went on a blocking spree knowing that he just got owned so badly that he would never live this down ever, like me showing you this right now, for example. And as seen here, Nick is shown by GigaBear themselves saying wowza and wanting more info so he could own Grums, but the only person who got owned in the end was actually Nick himself. Yes, it is clearly hypocritical that a man who now calls for studios and companies to sue or somehow get the accounts banned that routinely expose them like me, Grums, and many, many more, ended up being the exact thing he wanted out of the industry himself. The only person who wasn't checking their sources, who wasn't telling the truth, was Nick. It was never the other way around. A lot of Grums' sources are people that I know too. I'm pretty confident that his source on Ghost of Yote are the same sources I have too. But I haven't actually discussed that with him, and I can't really confirm that. It's just a hunch of mine. Maybe I'll ask the source if they are Grums' too. It really wouldn't surprise me, to be honest, but I was the one who showed on LinkedIn how Rockstar was pushing their white developers through unconscious bias training. Even with the alarming evidence to prove that it was happening, the industry stayed silent and didn't report on that story. Because my findings alongside Francesco Solback of that Park Place went against their narrative. I told the internet through my sources that Tencent was closing in on controlling Ubisoft and saving them from financial ruin due to Ubisoft's massive loss of goodwill and money. That video that I posted about it, it came out a day or two before PlayStation places like Insider Gaming started reporting the same story that I already put in those videos. Yet even by then they said I was lying, only for Tencent to put a $1.5 billion influx of cash into Ubisoft and then 4 Vantage Studios, but then I was still a liar. They also said I was lying when I heard Veilguard was full of activists and that one of the voice actors on that game exposed it all to Smash JT and then some about how crazy the people at BioWare were. I reported on how Veilguard failed to meet expectation money-wise from sources. They said I was wrong. Then it just turned out, oh, Veilguard actually was a massive failure and the studio was actually indeed full of activists. I've shared details on this channel of games like Assassin's Creed Hexi and plot details from games like Star Wars Eclipse and more. They say that I'm lying all of the time to hurt my credibility. They also said that I was wrong recently about Ghost of Yotei's sales by using an article from a website called thegamebusiness.com. Here's that article on screen, by the way. What's hilarious is that in this Game Business article, they claim that Ghost of Yotei was the second best-selling game during release in Europe. Yet people on Twitter use this to say that the game was succeeding, not realizing that the article was only for Europe, not America, Canada, or anywhere else in the world. And they also seem to forget that the article was even written by Christopher Dring, the same guy who said this prior to this article, as you can also see on screen, where he admits openly that Ghost of Yotei is down at least 40% compared to Tsushima in Europe alone, where he's reporting from. Yet even then, these people online considered it a victory in proving me wrong somehow when the guy they're referencing literally admitted that the game was down 40% in Europe, and then said the game was in second place in Europe and not the whole world, and from what I was told, and Grums heard this too, was the game was still below Tsushima anyways. Regardless, the truth didn't matter. People ran with the story because apparently if you're in second place with 40% less sales in Europe alone, it somehow now means that your game is a success while completely ignoring the rest of the planet's sales apparently. Like, are you noticing a pattern here that every time me, Grums, or someone tells you these things, like 90% of the time what we hear is likely true? I know for a fact that what I heard on Ghost of Yotei is true. I stand by that because the people I talk to are literal game devs and more in video games. I've spoken to these people in voice calls. I chat to them regularly. I'm making up Ghost of Yotei sales about as much as I am making up the fact that I was told that Tencent would consume Ubisoft, which, oh yeah, that was true as well. So what these people do when they can win in ethics is that they start attacking your credibility. What's extra hilarious is that people defended this, like Nick Calandra, as seen here on Twitter as well, where he does try to take a jab at people like me and Grums over Yotei. But again, Nick, I know you hate me, but I mean your own friends and employees seem to hate you too. But you have to know that in that article you just shared and many others that are referenced, there were no sales numbers at all. Nowhere in that article to somehow attack my credibility proves anything. They just say that Yotei did well. Oh, okay. Where's the proof? What's the number? Where's anything to prove that what they're saying is right? Here's the chart from that article that Nick and so many others are referencing, by the way. You can go look at the article yourself if you don't believe me, but you guys tell me, where do you see any actual sales numbers in that article? Where's the units sold? What's the number? There's nothing. They say nothing. They just put some games in a list and then call it a day, but these people will use it to attack the credibility of me and others when nothing shows that proves anything, but that Christopher Dring, the guy who wrote it, put games in a list with zero numbers, again, who admitted the game sold 40% less himself in Europe as well. Like, Nick Calandra is not only a dummy when he shares stuff like this, he's also a snake too, in case you don't know. His own former friend who worked at Second Wind, called the Other Frost online, that's his username anyways, exposed Nick with audio messages, videos, and many posts from their private chats. The video in question is this one on screen here. You should give it a watch after my video maybe. I will leave a link in the description box below so you can see just how corrupt, allegedly anyway, Nick is according to Frost, who worked at Second Wind. Now what I'm about to say is not what I think personally of Nick, but I am just telling you what Other Frost has said about him instead. So if Nick tries to say I'm somehow slandering him here, I'm not. I'm just telling you what Frost said about Nick with the evidence that Frost presented himself. Whether it's true or not, I can't confirm because obviously I don't have access to Second Wind or Nick's private messages. But Frost did obviously at some time, which is why his video exists in the first place that you should watch. Anyway, Frost said that Nick Calandra would create backroom deals that would pressure developers into paying Second Wind what they demanded for coverage. This is what Frost said, not me, so don't shoot the messenger. And also according to Frost, Nick also prioritized content that emboldened his views and biases while suppressing others at Second Wind who challenged his own views or how to do things at the company. As seen here on screen from Frost's video, he shows Discord messages of Nick apologizing to Frost himself for not being professional. But according to Frost, Nick Calandra only apologized because he was first mandated by the rest of the group to do so. Again, I don't know if these messages are true, alright, but this is what this former Second Wind guy is saying about Nick, so you tell me if you believe him. Frost also also said that Nick also forbade his own people from making deals with smaller developers who couldn't afford Second Wind's prices because he wanted to get as much money as possible from them. Again, that's allegedly, but that's what he said, and is also seen here in that same video. Frost also alleges with evidence that Nick wanted to be the first point of contact with any developer or studio when it came to deals, and he forbid anyone else at Second Wind to do this besides him. Frost also just outright exposed what Nick and others were making at Second Wind based on Patreon donations and then some. As also seen here from Frost's video, Nick is or was the second highest paid person at Second Wind during this time last year. As seen here, according to Frost, it was because Nick believed that he was entitled to a certain living condition and that he had a mortgage to pay. Nick made roughly $8,000 a month off Second Wind. Yahtzee Croshaw, arguably the biggest draw and the whole reason why Second Wind even exists, was getting roughly $12,500, which honestly that feels low to me because Yahtzee is genuinely the only reason why anyone would even care about Second Wind to begin with. Frost also alleges in his video that Nick said that Second Wind could exist just fine without Yahtzee's content, which is just delusional if you ask me. Because if you go to Second Wind's channel like I did when making this video here, as you can see, I sorted their over 1,300 videos already by popularity, and look at that. Every single video that is their most popular is the Yahtzee Croshaw content. Gee, I wonder why. So Nick claiming allegedly again that Second Wind could somehow exist without Yahtzee is just frankly delusional. It's insane. It's like saying the Conan O'Brien show could exist without Conan O'Brien. It just doesn't make any sense. Look, this Nick guy wants me and others off the internet, I guess, and the industry, all of it, because we are exposing people like him and more for being morally ambiguous and shady. And it's really no lie to say that Nick absolutely did ruin the public image and momentum of Second Wind, which has limped on ever since, with only the Yahtzee content actually doing well, with various anomalies here and there. But Frost also claims that Nick was 99% blamed for Second Wind's group's failure, and because he refused to change how he did things and would not adapt ever, believing allegedly that his way was the best way despite his way leading to the escapist failing, leading to mass layoffs in the first place, and his Prima Game Guys channel also dying. So again, according to Frost, Nick was the harbinger of his own destruction and refused to ever pivot or change how he did anything despite them not working at all. Frost also said at one point that Nick was close to being ousted and fired by his own friends from Second Wind for his behavior, and how that public humiliation ritual that happened following the whole Gamergate 2 thing that owned him publicly really damaged their public image, and I agree it did, because they lost money on Patreon, their views dipped, and since then Second Wind, besides, again, the Yahtzee's content, they just haven't recovered to the same highs. I should say also, I don't hate Second Wind, I don't have a problem with anyone there, but really just Nick Calandra. He's frankly just ruining everyone's bag, if you will, by just being himself. Second Wind would objectively be a much better channel and company if Nick wasn't there. I guarantee you that people don't support Second Wind just because they don't want their money going into Nick's pockets, and I don't blame them. But I think claiming that YouTubers are somehow to blame for the industry's failings when in reality YouTubers have just replaced the game journalists by actually saying things how it is very telling. I don't care if I don't get access to games. Sometimes I do get codes from companies. I mean, it's not needed really, but like Square Enix might send me a code here or there, which is honestly surprising, as does Koei Tecmo as well usually too. But I've never been given a code from say PlayStation Studios or any of these Western studios either, because I would rather have my ability to say what I really think than be shackled by this arbitrary free code that I'm given instead. The industry, if you ask me, it does need a reset. And the current old guard of journalists, mostly, not all, but mostly, are objectively all politically aligned against the players, and that's just the truth. Like, look at all the content they make. How can you not come to that conclusion? And by the way, companies cannot sue you for speaking out against their games and products. Anyone is legally allowed to make a video about any game or movie or show they want, whether it's positive or negative. How many retrospectives exist online or reviews for any which retro game or modern game? Thousands, right? These publishers, they can't just sue someone if they say their game sucks. It's their opinion. Me telling you about what happens in Ghost of Yotei or Dragon Age the Veilguard isn't somehow some grounds to be sued. It's not illegal to tell people what's inside of a video game's contents that are in the game. Like if I were to tell you that the Veil Jumpers in Veilguard are led by an Asian and black elf, that's not even racist. It's literally what is in the game if you play it and look at it. It's about as illegal as me telling you that you can also level up in Veilguard, I guess, or upgrade your equipment, or that it's open world in Yotei. These people just don't want us here, and they want censorship to reign supreme simply because they don't like that people like me exist. Because I threaten their integrity, which, let's be real, they didn't have any to begin with. I mean, Nick Calandra is just being a snake. If his own friends are ousting him and he's publicly humiliating himself, I mean, how is that anyone's fault but his own? Like, I had nothing to do with Giga Bear owning Nick at all. I didn't even know it happened until it happened. Like, why are you attacking me and others when we want nothing to do with you in the first place? You should probably deal with your former employees exposing you before really anything else, but clearly that video that Frost did still exists because you know you can't refute anything that he said, can you? I guess not. I don't even want to cancel you, Nick, if you're watching this, because you just did it to this. You did it to yourself, and you know that. You ruined your own integrity and sabotaged Second Wind's credibility by being a stupid person and a good little soldier who is way in over his head. And anyone who gives you money to shill their games are kind of idiots, honestly, because not only is your reach bad, but you're allegedly not even a good boss to your own employees based on those allegations too. Who knows, maybe they aren't true, but it's like been a year and then some, and you haven't refuted anything that Frost said in that video. You could prove him wrong then, but until that really happens, then unfortunately for you, this is how people are going to perceive you unless you turn it around. I don't care either way, you aren't going to stop me, and it probably angers you that me in my room with a laptop is getting better views consistently than your entire team. Like, I don't know what to tell you, dude. You doomed the escapists, you doomed your guide channel, you're dooming Second Wind as well, and you're trying to side with people like Sweet Baby. Like, come on. It's just pathetic, sad, and laughable at this point. I call you a clown, Nick, but you're in fact the entire circus now. There isn't enough clown makeup in the world to effectively portray how goofy you look to me and others. The craziest part of all of this is that the Second Wind guys are still somehow okay with you being there, knowing what it does to their public reception, but if I had to guess, it's probably something like a contract that like allows Nick to stay there, and that's why they can't get rid of him. But once that contract is up, I wouldn't be surprised if he's gone. But look, in the end, you can try to come for me, but seeing your track record, it's clear that you have your own behavior and skeletons to deal with already. Sorry that I'm not a terrible psycho super villain like you are. I just wanted to play video games. And that somehow now makes me the worst human imaginable. I don't care, okay? We'll just keep moving. Let's keep changing the industry. But what do you think? Thanks for being here, guys. Seriously, I appreciate it immensely. Have a wonderful day. I'm not going anywhere. And these people, yeah, they're crazy. Have a dope days. And Nick, stop while you're ahead. Seriously.